Okay, so someone is saying, I'm a 30-year-old woman that is looking to restart the career after a break of 4 years, and it's very daunting for me. I'm pitted against candidates 8 or 10 years younger. Do you have any advice? I, I, I would, at your age, I would apply the same advice that I'm saying that I would apply to myself. That you do your best, you try and believe in yourself as best you can. And one piece of advice that I really believe in this strongly. I'm one of those people that tends to jump in and without a lot of pre-planning. But and there, there's a downside to that. But I honestly believe that if you think too much, you can overthink everything. If I would have thought about age-related issues when I came to France at 68, I might have thought this is a really foolish decision to come to a foreign country where you don't know anyone at an age where you're likely to have health problems. And I'd have probably talked myself out of doing it. So to this young woman, I would say, weigh the pros and cons, but don't give too much weight to the cons. Sometimes you just have to jump in. You just have to do it and believe in yourself. So that's my best advice that I can give you, really. Just if you believe in something passionately, if you want to do something, you will find a way to make it work. I mean, sometimes it's easy to have ideas. We have an idea that we'd like to do something, but maybe it isn't something we really, really, really want to do. Maybe it's one of those things you think, well, maybe it would be nice. But if you don't have the passion for it, if you don't really, really want to do it, you'll find reasons not to do it. So think about the things you really want. Think about, to me, living in France, I don't know why. I grew up in England. I hadn't been to France until I was in my 30s or 40s. So I don't know why France was so important, but somehow or other, I'd always had this idea that there was a point in my life where I would like to live in France. And even though I came to France after my mum died. She died at 100 and I was 68. And I thought, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. I just had to do it. And it was that important to me. And I didn't really understand quite why it was important, but it was important enough. And even, when I first arrived, the biggest obstacle was the place that I'd found to rent. I've written about it on Medium. It was really barely livable. And I'd landed in a small village that was miles away from anything. I thought that I wasn't going to drive. So there were, and without driving, it was quite difficult to live there. But these were obstacles that, had I not wanted to make this work, it might have been enough to turn me back, to make me give up the idea. But I really wanted it to work. So it did. And having the sticking with it and staying with it, finding whatever humor I could find in the situation really, really helped. So I'm just going to look through the questions here and see if there's something, because I imagine this more like a question and answer. So I'm hoping. Lou said, I heard you talking to Peter. Okay. Can you talk about how to deal with the inner struggle and the inner voices that tell you cannot do this? That Josiah is that you don't have what it takes, that it's too late. Yeah, I mean, it's hard, the inner voices that's, as a writer, those inner voices are always saying, you write something and you think, this is rubbish. I've gone through that so many times. And again, I think it's really just not giving in to, if you listen to those inner voices too much, it's like giving in to negativity. You've got to want to do it, and you've just got to overcome that. There's always people are always going to have reasons why you shouldn't do something. And I think, again, it's the passion, the conviction that this is something you want to do within reason, and you just have to believe in yourself. It's really funny. I grew up I grew up with asthma and eczema, and I missed a lot of time from school. And my teachers always told my mom, Janice has ability, but she really doesn't have much confidence in herself. And I grew up thinking that about myself. And not really testing myself. And then when I in my 30s, my late 30s, in America, I had a job in a corporation and in the public relations department of a corporation. And somehow I felt that I was an imposter, that, I didn't deserve to be there. So that was one of those inner voices that I heard. But I made the mistake of telling my boss in one of the, like a performance evaluation. He said, "What would you change about yourself?" And I said, "I think I'd like to have more confidence in myself." That was absolutely the worst thing to say to him, because I was with that corporation for 10 years, and that damn comment that I made to him came back to haunt me for years. And I finally said to him, when I said that to you, I don't think I did have that much confidence, but I do now. And I don't want to hear that anymore. And it's funny to me to look back. You can grow up with these false perceptions of yourself and buy into them somehow, buy into, hearing that you have no confidence is one of those negative voices. You buy into it. And, sometimes you just have to say, wait, this isn't really true about me anymore. I do have confidence. So I think it's taking a good look at yourself, really, and really questioning the things that you thought you knew and believed about yourself, and harnessing the strength that you feel inside. I hope that helps. Let me look on here. So okay. Okay, I'm just everybody is answering my first question. What do you so Wanda Penderglass is asking, what do you find your audience relates most to in your writings? And this is a great question, because I like to write about different things. I write about food, I write about politics, but the things that people really relate to and that I get the most response from is when it's deeply personal. When I talk about the things that scare me, the things that I've struggled against. I just recently, my most recent story on Medium was about the death of a very good friend. And, I'm at the age, I'm in my late 70s, and I'm at the age where this kind of thing it's part of growing old. And I have had, and this is really difficult for me to deal with right now. The fact that this person who just seems so alive, so vital, with some seem to have gone on forever, is no more. And that particular story, which it really helped me to tell that story, but the responses that I got from it, I had the feeling it really helped other people too. It's a universal kind of feeling. So to answer that question, I think that what the audience relates to most is when I write about something that is kind of universal, the fear about relationships that I I didn't think that I could ever live with somebody again. I was married a few times, and I swore that I would never live with anyone again. And here I am, living happily with my partner. Um, it, so I wrote about that. I write about this. I write for two reasons. I write to work out things that I have questions about, to sort out my feelings. And I write in the hope that what I'm writing will resonate with other people. And really, when it does, and when I do get the comments, that is the most rewarding thing. It truly is. I've never had that experience. I've been writing almost my whole professional life. I've written for newspapers, I've been a publicity writer, I've done all kinds of writing, but I've never had the sense of community that I've had writing here on Medium. And that's been absolutely fantastic and incredibly rewarding. So I'm going to look through questions now to see if there's anything else. So Lee Bench, who I've written back and forth to on Medium. It's lovely to be answering your question directly. He says, "Are you affected by the riots and social discontent in France?" That's a good question, really. I've thought about writing about this because I live in a small village in a wine growing area, and when the riots in Paris and Marseille happened a month or so ago, I looked out of the window of my village, and it was like the most peaceful place in the world. While that's lovely, I sometimes really wonder if it feels like a kind of fool's paradise. I mean, there were cars that were burned in Marseille and Paris. If a car was burned in this village, the whole village would gather around. I mean, there's only one policeman in the village. So, I see. I got a little announcement there. So I'm not affected directly, to answer your question, Lee. I'm affected indirectly. And what I do know about living in rural France is that it's very quiet and tranquil, but that's a little misleading because, Marine Le Pen, who is a very right-wing politician, is very strong in the rural sections of France. And that's partly because the rural areas of France feel neglected by politicians. And, they feel they're being overlooked and so forth. So, I see all this as a foreigner, as somebody who's never really going to be long here. I'm detached. So I don't know if I'm not sure that answers your question. I'm affected probably intellectually when I think about it, but not really personally. Somebody said that I have to fix the reviews setting on my end. I can see all the questions, so I think. Let me answer this question. Nina Sklansky asks, have you always been a writer? Whether yes or no, did that figure in your move? Yeah, I really always have. I wrote when I was a little girl. I remember writing on sheets of paper, and then I would fold them in half and stitch them down the middle to make a book, and then I'd write in my book. So I've always liked to write. Did it figure in my decision to come to France? It did in a way. Before I came to France, I'd been freelance writing, and I was working on a novel. I used to write for Harlequin. I wrote 9 books for Harlequin romance. When I came to France, the idea when I came to France was that I'd finished the book that I'd been working on, which I didn't. I wrote in the book, but I never finished it. Um, mainly I came to France hoping somehow that I would pretty much live the kind of life I'd been living in the States. Um, but it would be in a different environment. It would, I mean, I was hoping that I would make friends, that I would have some kind of social life and just go on writing. But somehow I'd be living in France and everything would be a little bit different. And that is kind of the way it worked. I stopped writing the novel that I'd been working on because I got very interested in local winemaking. And for a year or so, I followed this local winemaker, a woman, and I thought that I would write about her life, about, being a winemaker and so forth. And that wasn't finished either. I have a stream of unfinished projects behind me, which is one of the one of the things I love about writing on Medium. You write the story, you post it, and then you go on to another story. There isn't, these pages of manuscript that haunt you and say, come back, come back. So, yeah, that's that. Right. Oh, there's loads of questions here. All right, Melinda, where are you in France? I'm in the south. I'm in the region called Occitanie, and a part of that region is Languedoc. I live about an hour from Montpellier, which is the biggest city close by. This area of France is known colloquially as poor man's Provence, because we have the weather, we have the beaches, we have many of the things that people flock to Provence for, but it's a lot cheaper to live here. So don't tell anybody because it will drive the price of houses up. But it's lovely. It's really nice. The winters are mild. The worst thing about it here is the summers are unbearably hot. For some reason, while the whole planet seems to have been scorching this summer, we've had the coolest summer temperatures that I've ever known in the 10 years that I've been here. So it's very strange, and I've loved it. But yeah, I mean, it's a lovely region. It's absolutely beautiful. Great vineyards as far as you can see, and then there's the ocean, which isn't the Mediterranean, which isn't very far away. There are mountains, so it's a wonderful place to live. Right. Okay, excuse me while I'm. Oh, here's Kit. Kit, Kit. I hope I'm saying this right. Deja, who lives in Paris, is one of the people I love to communicate with on Medium, because she's lived here more than 20 years, I think, and she lives in Paris, so her lifestyle is quite different from me in rural France. But it's lovely, and it's lovely. I'm happy to see you here, Kit. There's quite a few people who live in France on Medium. I've never met anyone personally. I've never met anyone, any of the Medium writers personally. But I feel actually as though I know them because, I'm on Medium every day. We write, different people write back and forth, commenting on articles and everything. In fact, Kit's article was about speaking French, which is, for me, it's a constant struggle. I mean, some days I think I'm doing better, and then I realize that I absolutely understood nothing that somebody has said to me. So one of the big things about living in a foreign country, you don't truly feel a part of it unless you speak the language. More than I do. I mean, the French often say to I apologize for my French. And then the French will say to me, well, my English is not very good either. And I say, yeah, but this is your country. I'm visiting. I live here, and I should have a better mastery of the language than I do. But, you think living in a country that you're immersed in it and it would be a lot easier. But there are days that go by that I don't really go out. I'm sitting here at home writing in English. My partner and I communicate in English. And so, you don't learn it through osmosis. So, my progress in French hasn't been what I'd hoped it would be. And that's been, excuse me, I can see something on my lip and it's distracting. Anyway, that's been one of the disappointments, because I would have just imagined after 10 years I'd be, chattering away, which I'm not. I'm like a precocious toddler, I want, I like, I don't like, I need, I can do all that. But right, I just want to flip through here to see. Having made the move 10 years ago, did you ever consider doing it in an RV? No. I mean, that might be fun, but I stayed in an RV for 3 months, dog sitting for my daughter, and it's not something I really want to do. Okay. Do you feel more secure about your health in France than you would be in the US? That's from Patricia. I think that the French healthcare system is absolutely fantastic. And really the answer to that question is yes. I've had eczema for my entire life, and it's just been, at times in my life, it's just been awful. I mean, just incredibly painful outbreaks all over my skin. And 3 years ago, I was put on a treatment called Dupixent, and it's just been a life-changing treatment. It cleared up my eczema just like that. The cost of it is incredible. It's like, around 2,000 euros a month, and the French healthcare system pays for it. And my gratitude for that knows no bounds. I don't know what would happen if I was still in the US. I'm sure Medicare would pay for some of that. But the cost, the constant worry in the US about how to pay for healthcare, the stories about people mortgaging their house to pay for healthcare, I feel much more confident and secure in that regard living in France. And other than the kind of, I had hip replacement surgery recently, and I've written about how difficult, it's kind of a DIY approach. You find your own radiologist, you find your own surgeons. Nothing is really done for you. You've got to do it all yourself. But once you've done all that, it's a fantastic system, and I have nothing but praise for it. I'm really happy to. Actually, it's been a good experience. It's been daunting because apart from the language difficulties, dealing with French bureaucracy as I tried to arrange hip surgery was stressful, to say the least. But I have nothing but praise for the system. All right, I need to put my glasses back on. Okay, one of the hardest things about making a big change is all the connections and relationships you've made over the years. This is from Demian. Don't have a big family, but I'm very close to the few I have. How did you deal with any relationship changes you made, other than maybe their reactions? That is one of the difficulties of living in a foreign country. I have a great granddaughter now that I don't know the next time I'll see her. I saw her when I was back this year. I have a close relationship with my daughter, but I see her every few years and we talk. several times a week. We WhatsApp. I don't think it would be possible to live. I don't know how it would have been possible to live abroad before the internet. The internet has just made a huge change. To be able to look at somebody you love and talk to them on, that's fantastic. Still, it's difficult. I mean, it's difficult when I go back to wonder when I'll see people again. You know, the older you get, the more difficult it is to make these long journeys. I mean, it's an exhausting thing. So I think that is one of the difficulties. And you know, some of the comments that I've had on Medium when I write about living in France and so forth, you know, people with grandchildren say, you know, it sounds wonderful, but I really love my relationship with my kids and my grandchildren, and I could never live that far away from them. And I, you know, I can quite well see that. It's just a choice that you have to make. So there's pros and cons, you know, to every decision. It worked for me. I'm not sure it worked for everybody. What are your thoughts on being an older individual? Karen Reed Hendon asks, what are your thoughts of being an older individual revisiting a past activity that today has very different rules and mindsets than when you sought it out when you were younger? Like, I'm not sure what that means. Really, revisiting a past activity. I don't know. You know, dating immediately came to mind, but I'm not doing that anymore. I don't know. I don't know. I think until maybe 5 years or so ago, I wasn't. Oh God, something on my lip is driving me crazy. I wasn't really thinking that much about my age. I really didn't. And so at the start of my 70s, I mean, next year I'll be 80. So I have this whole decade of 70s almost to look at. And at the start of my 70s, I really didn't think about age. I mean, when I did, it was all external, like, you know, how many wrinkles are showing, you know, do I look younger than I really am, all of that. And in the last 5 years, that has changed. And I think it's a health. I think it's been a health issue, really. I mean, no, you know, I don't have any big health issues, but I thought for quite a while that I had sciatica, a sciatic pain, and it made me limp. And I was limping, and that kind of hampered my mobility, and so I didn't walk as much as I was walking, and that more than anything else created the reality that, yeah, you know, you're in your mid-70s. I mean, you're not, whatever you look like on the outside, you know, you're aging. And one of the, you know, the having hip replacement was a huge eye-opener. You know, it was just like, I need hip replacement. But now I've had it. I'm really, really happy because the limp that had been bothering me for so long has gone. You know, I thought it was sciatica, and it wasn't. It was my hip that needed replacement. But you know, age is just funny how it just kind of creeps up on you, and the realities of it. That, you know, maybe I'm a little more tired now. Earlier, I fall asleep watching TV, as my partner will testify. Yeah, it's not for sissies, aging. What do you do, Steve Dace? I'm sorry if I'm mangling these names. What do you do if you think you can move forward and accomplish a lot, but you find you are perceived as less creative due to age? Well, I mean, maybe that might be a problem if I were working for a corporation or you know, how other people saw me and judged me because of my age. But I don't, but in my life right now, I feel creative. I feel creative, and I feel I have the freedom to be creative, and I can write creatively about what it feels like to be this age. I mean, you know, for a long time, age, I lied about my age. I lied about my age all the time. And I wouldn't tell people my age. And it's been a great relief to really just acknowledge, yeah, I'm this age. This is it. You know, there's things that come along with it. And to just be open about it, you know, really. I mean, but that I think, you know, if I look back on the decade of my 70s, which is almost over now. I think that will be a big part of it in the latter part of my 70s, really acknowledging, yeah, you are this age, you know, don't, no point in making a secret of it. And then that gives me the freedom to write about it and to think about it in different ways other than just bitching about it. You know, I mean, to be quite honest, I don't see a whole lot of benefits to it. I don't feel wiser than I did when I was much younger. I just feel like an older version of myself. So I don't really feel. I think of my friend's death, and I feel fortunate to be alive, to be happy, to be reasonably healthy, to have a good relationship. You know, what more can you want? So, okay, I think I may have gone past. I had a half an hour, so I don't really know if I've gone past my if I've gone past my. Well, let me answer a couple more questions, and I'll just keep going until they kick me off, I guess. You moved to such a small village in France, down where, who I also have read and enjoy his writing too. How did you choose that location? It was because it was close to the first location I found that had the cheapest apartment. I mean, I could have ended up anywhere in France. It was all a matter of economy. I just needed an apartment that I could afford. And the funny thing is, I lived in California for years and years, Southern California. And one of the things that I disliked most about Southern California was the kind of Mediterranean climate and the sense that there weren't any real seasons. And here I come to live in a part of France that truly has a Mediterranean climate. But the difference between the Mediterranean climate here and in California is there really is more of a seasonal change. We have winters here, they're mild. We have hotter summers and we have a spring and autumn. One of the things in this area that I'm very aware of is the seasonal changes in the vineyards, and it's lovely. I find it such a satisfying, soul-enhancing thing to see the changes, to see the leaves fall from the vines in the autumn after the grapes have been picked, and then they go dormant, and then these old vines that you couldn't imagine would ever come to life again. By the spring, they've got little buds, and then they have grapes, and it's the whole cycle. And being able to witness it as closely as I do is incredibly, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful experience, and I love that. And it feels sort of philosophical too to see these old vines. And the winemaker that I was following when I first came here, she had some very old vines that were almost 100 years old, and she'd call them the old ladies. And I could sort of see the parallel there between, these older vines, although they weren't giving off the fruit and that they once did, they'd slowed down their production. But the wine made from those old vines was really rich and beautiful, much more so than from the younger minds. So it was a lovely kind of metaphor in a way for aging too. I'd still like to do something with that whole idea. It's like the old lady vines and this old lady, and just kind of putting it together somehow. But I just couldn't, I haven't really been able to find the approach to it that I want. So what things did you write about in your very first articles? Mitt, how did you transition from non-writer to new writer? Well, the first thing when I first started on Medium, my whole purpose was to have some discipline in my writing because I was getting discouraged and it was harder to sit at the computer every day and write something. So I thought, I'm just going to write about small things in my day, just any small thing that happens. And that was because I thought nobody was going to read it. I was sure that I was just writing it and I didn't think anyone would read it. And that's what I wrote. I just wrote about minutiae. And then from there, I just went on. Minutiae happened to be a lot about France too, and then it just kind of expanded from there. And over the years, I think it's not quite 3 years. I've written about a lot of different things. I've expanded my subject, but I think of late I write more about aging and the issues of aging because I like to write about them. It sorts out my feelings too. Okay. Where did you move from? I moved from California and in Washington State, and I used to return first I returned every other year. Now it's between 5-year intervals. Do you write for forums besides Medium? No. And Lindsay asked, do you write for forums besides Medium? How long have you been writing? What type of writing do you enjoy best? I've been writing, I've already said this, I've been writing for most of my life. And at the moment, the kind of writing that I enjoy most is personal, is essays, really. I've written fiction, and for a while I thought I enjoyed writing fiction, but I really, really enjoy the personal essays. Are you on private insurance or through the government? I have, in France, you have to, it's the law, you have to have a carte vitale, and it reimburses about 60% of your care. So that's what I have. Right. I'm just looking to see if there are any questions. Okay. Linda asked, have you read Linda Lum, who is another person that I communicate with quite frequently. Have you read 1,000 Days in Venice? Highly romanticized story, but no, I haven't read that. I shall. Medium is great for book suggestions. I've picked up quite a few Medium readers. Yeah, the good book readers. I've read quite a few. So thank you, Linda. This is really quite a weird sensation because I'm sitting here yakking to myself on the screen, but I don't really know how many people are watching. Like when I've talked on Zoom, you can see all the people that are sitting around the table, but I can't see that. So I don't really know. Okay. All right. So it's 5:22 my time here. I think we're gonna call this an end. Call an end to this now. And I really hope that I've answered some of your questions. I'm sorry for the glitches, and I look forward to communicating with you again on Medium. And if you listen to any of this, I'd love to hear from you too. So it's been great. Thank you. Bye.